Requires to the chair how much time remains on each side.
The gentleman from Oregon has 10.5 minutes remaining. The gentleman from Ohio has 4 minutes.
Okay. With that, I would yield 3 minutes to the gentlelady from Maryland, Ms. Edwards.
The gentlelady from Maryland is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise in strong opposition to the House consideration of the Reducing Regulatory Burdens Act that the House Republicans have incorrectly and misleadingly renamed the Zika Vector Control Act. In the 113th Congress, this exact legislation, with a bill number of H.R. 935, failed under suspension of the rules 253 to 148. At the time, Republicans subsequently rescheduled it 2 days later under a closed rule to allow passage. I was the Democratic manager of that bill under consideration in 2014. And in fact, since my statement laid out a real substantive concern with the legislation, I ask unanimous consent that a copy of my remarks at the time be made a part of today's record.
Without objection.
In this Congress, this legislation was marked up early last year in the Agriculture Committee as the Reducing Regulatory Burdens Act. The Committee of Primary Jurisdiction, the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, has taken no action on the bill this time around. And yet here we are again on the House floor. The Republican leadership has now changed the name of the bill to the Zika Vector Control Act. A new name and the inclusion of a sunset date in 2018 are the only differences from the previous iterations of this bill. H.R. 897 is the exact same legislation that pesticide manufacturers and other special interests have been pushing for the past several years. It would eliminate Clean Water Act safeguards that protect our waterways and communities from excessive pesticide pollution. The pesticide general permit targeted in this legislation has been in place for nearly 5 years, and now alarmist predictions by pesticide manufacturers then and others about the impact of this permit have failed to bear any fruit. And in fact, in March 2014, before the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, Ken Kaposis, Deputy Assistant Administrator of the Office of Water at the Environmental Protection Agency, testified, and I quote, "We have not been made aware of any issues associated with the pesticide general permit. Nobody has brought an instance to our attention where somebody has not been able to apply a pesticide in a timely manner. There have been no instances." And yet here we are. And so since then, all across the country, pesticide applicators, usually utilities managing their rights of way, are complying with the Clean Water Act permits to protect water quality. The public is getting the information they need that we couldn't get before about what pesticides are being sprayed into what bodies of water. Congress should not and must not respond to outdated, sky-is-falling problems that history has shown have never occurred and weaken protections for the water our children drink. In past Congresses, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have chosen a public health emergency du jour as a rationale to pass and enact legislation into law. At one time, they cited, as they have again today, West Nile virus. The next time, it was the Western wildland fire suppression. And last Congress, it was the drought. And now, nothing less than a purely political move, Republicans are considering this bill on suspension, but this time under the guise of combating the spread of Zika.
Time.
Mr. DeFazio.
Yield the gentlelady 1 additional minute.
The gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Let us be clear. This bill has absolutely nothing to do with Zika or trying to stop the threat of the Zika virus. And despite claims made by my colleagues to the contrary, the permit already in effect allows spraying for Zika or other mosquito control programs. H.R. 897 is simply another attack on the Clean Water Act as part of the Republicans' anti-environmental deregulatory agenda. And I would urge my colleagues to vote this legislation down, and let's do something real to combat Zika. The President has asked for $1.9 billion in emergency funding because it is an emergency. It's a public health threat. And if we did that now, then we'd be fulfilling our duties and our responsibilities. But this legislation today fulfills no responsibilities, gets in the way of protecting clean water, and does absolutely nothing to combat the Zika virus that, if you look at the map, is quickly spreading across this country. Thank you, and I yield the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman yields. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.